Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to Martine's Musings podcast. I'm your host, MartineFelton, and today I have Sandy Johnston with me. She is an abundant life coach, an angel intuitive, energetic healer, and podcast host of Tiaras, Tears, and Triumphs. So welcome, Sandy. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much, Martine. I'm really, really happy to be here and can't wait to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, so we met, I believe, in a podcast collaboration group, and I've been looking for healers, intuitives, empaths to bring on the show and just talk about, what it is, how it is, I should say, to be a healer, the work that you do, and how you help others. So I'd like to just start off to just asking you what it is that you do and how do you help. I know that you specifically help women, and how do you do that?
Yeah, I think that really things started for me when I've always been a spiritual person.
Mm-hmm.
My whole life I've been a spiritual person, and I had a religious upbringing, I suppose, where, Christian upbringing, but that evolved for me into other things. I really wanted to explore things outside of the sort of rigid confines of the church. And so I learnt about other things. I was introduced to other things. And I suppose really I'd describe myself as being a light worker. And I think that a lot of us are light workers, and our purpose really is to bring light into people's lives. And this is when you explore what what's my purpose? Why am I here? What's this all about with life, and what is it that I'm meant to be doing? Mm-hmm. It just kept coming back to me that I was here to bring light into other people's lives, mm-hmm. whatever that meant. So being this spiritual person, I started exploring different things like becoming an angel intuitive and mm-hmm. also a pranic healer. And so throughout my own life, I have used my angel cards for asking those questions when I need guidance. And I think this is something which we all have questions that we need answers to in life. And
yeah, for sure.
Those big questions, we don't always know where to turn to find the answers. And having a conversation with God is often a felt experience. It's not like this big booming voice is coming in and saying, Sandy, go and do this. It comes through other ways, whether it is a repetition when you say, God, give me a sign, just give me a sign. Mm-hmm. And you see this repetition of numbers that come up over and over again in your day, where you're seeing 1111 or you're seeing 222 or whatever the sequence is. But when those things keep appearing for you, and mm-hmm. then you think, all right, I need to understand what the significance of this is, and then you can find the answers to those questions and know that these signals, that they symbolize something. They have a very important message there for you, for your life, to say, yes, you're on the right track, or hold on, you don't quite have everything that you need yet to move forward. I absolutely am passionate about the angel cards. I just absolutely love them, because every time you ask the angels for guidance, they give you what you need to know for that moment. And it's funny, I did a quick shuffle before the interview, and 3 cards came up, and the
Ooh,
first
which
card
one?
the first card I got was romance. I don't know if the
Okay.
listeners see that. So when this card came up to me, I thought, this really signifies romance is a very, very important part of life. And we are often just seeking that love in our life. And it's a lot of the work that I do is around helping women who have not fared well in their relationship, and their hearts have been broken, and they've most likely been betrayed by their romantic partner. But when we go through that and we come out of the other side, and there's a saying, for every breakdown there's a breakthrough. And you don't always see that breakthrough when you're going through that breakdown, but it's really good to remind yourself of that there is going to be a breakthrough in your life, even though you're going through that breakdown in the relationship. And you've got to really be open to be asking God, the angels, the universe, what is it that I need to learn? And that may be that you need to learn how to love yourself first before you can attract the right sort of relationship into your life. And so when I talk about romance and relationships, it's funny, but we kind of need to learn to romance ourselves. And it's the same thing as learning to love ourselves. We need to give ourselves that value, that we are worth romancing, and explore what romance actually means for us, and what it looks like for us, and what sort of things we'd be looking for in a romantic relationship. A big part of relationships is that we somehow have this perception that our romantic partner should automatically know what it is that we are seeking in terms of that language of love. And that can set us up for disappointment, because they won't necessarily know the language of love, and they need to be shown that language of love. And that really may come from having just conversations about the sort of things that you love, so that they are aware of what it is that you need, so you're not setting yourself up for disappointment.
This message, I'm really receiving that message. I really needed to hear that particular message right now.
Fantastic.
Yes. That message was meant for me.
Good. I'm so glad that I got that message and it was right for you. The second card that I got is focus. I'm just trying to get it on the camera so it's not glaring. So focus is the second card, and the message here in that card is that wherever we focus, or whatever our focus goes towards, is what we create for ourselves in our life. And this is just one of those, I think, an awareness. You need to have this awareness that if you're thinking good things, and your focus is on creativity, if your focus is on love, if your focus is on productivity, if your focus is pure, and then these are the things that you will attract. So this is where the law of attraction, I think focus is another word for the law of attraction, because that's where the law of attraction actually plays out in your life, is the things that you are focusing on. So if you are focusing on lack, if you're focusing on limitation, if you're focusing on the things that you don't want, if you're focusing on what is making you unhappy, then you're going to effectively be attracting more of that into your life. And this is why it is just so important to be aware of this and aware of where your focus, your energy is going, because you want to make sure that you're not allowing your energy to be robbed from the joyful, abundant life that you want to be living because you've got your focus in the wrong area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. And
Oh,
you said there was a third card?
the third card is Serenity. So hang on, where am I going with my card? There it is.
Yeah,
Serenity.
right there.
Serenity, gorgeous, gorgeous Serenity.
Perfect.
Now, serenity is something that I want to just talk about my own story for a minute, okay, because this will give some context to that card and the importance of serenity. So we're living in a very uncertain world at the moment. And when I say at the moment, life is always uncertain. There's no guarantees for us that we're going to be granted anything in life, but we're feeling the impacts of uncertainty because of COVID and what it has done to the world that we're living in. So it's a very different world at the moment to what we were used to, say, 2 years ago. We're all having a very different experience in this world right now. Now, I want to take myself back to and just tell you a little bit about my own background. Even though I've been a spiritual person all my life, I've been a very empathetic person. So empathetic people, one of my life lessons that I needed to learn was how to create safe boundaries for myself, because empathetic people are very open and they're very giving and they're very forgiving, and there's all these lovely qualities that empathetic people possess. But in being that open, you can, if you don't know how to create safe boundaries for yourself, you can leave yourself very open to be used and abused by narcissistic people. So so that was my experience. I fell into a very toxic, narcissistic, abusive relationship, and I was caught in that cycle of abuse for a decade. And the thing about abusive relationships is that the cycle of abuse gets worse, progressively worse over time. So there's lots of different forms of abuse, and one of people identify with abuse within relationships mostly by being physical, and that is most people's understanding of what an abusive relationship is. However, an abusive relationship can be many different things. It can be sexual abuse, it can be financial abuse, it can be psychological abuse. So it can also, I mean, there's betrayal that comes into it, but there are patterns of behavior that go on in a cycle of abuse. And I was caught in an abusive relationship where there was a lot of coercive control. And the thing about abusive relationships is it is all about power and control. So it's about the other person who they actually come from a place of having deep-seated insecurities in themselves, and that's what actually causes them to be this controlling person, and they don't want to take responsibility for anything in their own life, and they make you feel responsible for them and their happiness, and that was an extremely stressful time in my life. I was just in damage control all the time, cleaning up mess after mess after mess after all the dramas and everything that were happening on a daily basis in my life because of this narcissistic person that I had given my heart to. And during that period of my life, I would cry out to God for serenity. That was the thing that I valued the most at that time, the thing that I needed, because I had no peace. I was robbed of peace in this relationship. And that the reason I wanted to share my story is because that really does relate to that card of serenity. And I want to just tie that back to the time that we're living in now, this time which is fraught with stress and pressure, of how important it is to find that place of calm in your life, to find that place of calm in your day, to find the serenity. So I am a strong believer that if you are willing to seek for things, that you will find them. So that again takes us back to focus. And if you are focusing on serenity, you will find ways to create a space for yourself where you can have those moments of serenity. Serenity is so important to our well-being. Without it, we can really become very lost about where we are in life. And I often use this analogy about being in an aeroplane, and not that people are doing a heck of a lot of traveling at the moment, but there's the safety drill that they always run you through in aeroplanes, and they say that if the oxygen masks comes down, put your oxygen mask on yourself first. If you've got a child, make sure you put yours on first, and then if you need to assist anybody else, assist somebody else, but make sure that you are getting your oxygen, because if you're not getting your oxygen, then you're not going to be able to help the next person. Absolutely. So this is the importance of serenity and finding that peace in our day, in our life, because when we do, then we have more to give of ourselves to others. So, and the other side of that story with serenity is creating those boundaries for yourself, those safe boundaries to say, this is a priority for me. So I'm not going to put myself down the bottom of the list of priorities with self-care. I'm actually going to make my self-care a non-negotiable. And that time of having that meditative space to find your serenity, that's going to become a non-negotiable for you, because it is as important to us as is breathing. So so they're the cards that came up, and I just wanted to share those.
That was wonderful. Thank you. And you and I share the same experience, because I too am very empathic, and I had the experience of being in narcissistic toxic relationships. It was like a cycle of it that I went through, about 3 or 4 different relationships, but it was like I was with the same person back to back to back because that was what I was attracting, because that was the space I was in at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is so often the case. And it was also really true in my own experience too, because before that abusive relationship that I was talking about, I was in a toxic marriage, and it was like living with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I never knew where I stood, and I was always walking on eggshells, and my nervous system was absolutely messed up because of it. And we go through these same patterns in our life until we have learnt the life lessons that we need to learn to be able to break free from those patterns and attract something different into our life. And I think if I can share anything is with the listeners, is just to say to you that we're all on a journey in life, and we should be life learners. And I think if you're going to do anything to empower yourself in your life, it's to give yourself permission to be a life learner. And being a life learner means you need to suck at something before you become, even remotely good at it. Then you need to be, before you become good at something, you need to be remotely okay with it.
Right.
Then before you become great at something, you need to be good at it. So we need to allow ourselves to make that kind of growth and development in our life, and not think that as soon as we reach adulthood that is the time where we should have it all together, and that our lives should just run smoothly from there on in for the rest of our life, and we shouldn't have any ups or downs. That's not life. And life presents us with things as an opportunity for us to learn something, usually about our own growth and our own development. So this is where the work that I do is to really help women to learn to basically live a rich and rewarding life. And I help them build that foundation that comes from valuing themselves and having a really strong sense of self-worth. And if knowing that underpins everything, because if you don't value yourself, if you don't love yourself, then you're not going to be attracting what you really desire in your life. So it's all got to match, and you've got to have the right foundation. And when you've got the right foundation, then you're opening up all these channels to you, and the right sorts of things will come to you. So it's really, really important to work on that foundation first. So if you want a fabulous life but you're feeling miserable and you're not really liking yourself, if you do attract it, it may not be you won't have it for a long time in your life, because you've still stuck in the same energy. So we really need to work on shifting our energy, and that's it. It's a whole combination of things, as you know, Martine. It's, we are mind, body, spirit.
Yeah, and I do know that, because I do. That's a little bit of the same thing that I help women with as well. Just feeling more empowered, and self-care practices and self-love mindset, and just really stepping into their power. When did you come to the point where you were like, that's it? When your awakening, I should say, and you were like, and everything started looking different for you?
Wow, that's a really good question, because as somebody who was in an abusive relationship, it took me a long time to wake up and realize that as strong a person as I was before I had this awakening, that I went through a huge time in my life where I was a victim of circumstance. And as a victim of circumstance, it told me that I was in victimhood. And when you're in victimhood, then you can't step into empowerment until you are ready to leave victimhood behind. And that means being ready to take responsibility for everything that is in your life. And this is something that I'd just say, I got there not on my own. I got there with support. So, and I think it's really important to understand that all this inner work, there's so much inner work that we can do for ourselves. But when you've gone through stuff like abusive relationships, I just completely just recommend that you get in contact with a counsellor that works for you, and have somebody who you can start unpacking, just getting all of this stuff out of yourself and getting it, because otherwise, how you hear this expression of, as you go on in life and you're going into a new relationship, you come into that new relationship with baggage. Well, we do that in our lives, whether we're in a relationship or not. We're all carrying around all this stuff through life that is made up of all of our experiences. And if we don't do the work, we just continue to lug it around with us. And it's like dragging along behind us like this heavy weight all the time. And we need to be in this state of just giving ourselves that time to go, right, I'm going to have a look at what is there. What am I carrying around with me? And is this still part of me, or is this something that I can let go of? Is this the old me? If I haven't got any use for it anymore, let it go. You don't need to be lugging it around with you everywhere you go. And as you do that, that's when you're talking about changing your mindset. If you want to change your mindset, you need to be willing to let go of things that those limiting beliefs that you've been carrying around with you that aren't true. They're not serving you. They're not helping you to move forward in your life. They're not helping you to be happy. They're not helping you to be fulfilled. They're not helping you in any way, shape or form. All they're doing is weighing you down and making you heavy. So be willing to let them go. I know these things can sometimes feel comfortable because we're so used to carrying them around that we're like, well, that's a part of me. I don't know if I can let that go. But all it will be is a weight. So it's much better to, if you want to lighten your load, if you want to lighten up in your life, let the past go.
Yeah. That's one of the lessons that I had to learn too, about being able to let things go and like freeing myself. One thing that would really weighed me down personally was the fact that I made so many mistakes in the past, and I always constantly used to beat myself up, and then I would be apprehensive about making decisions or moving forward, about, you know what I mean, because I had made so many mistakes that I was afraid to do anything, because I was like, oh, this could be another mistake, Martine. You know what I mean? And that's a tough place to be.
It is. And I think that it really takes time to build your trust in yourself again. So, there's exercises that I work with your intuition too, because I think, some of the things that you're talking about, we tend to second guess ourselves.
Yes.
And we've lost faith in our own judgment when we've made some choices that have been really harmful to us and our lives, and that causes us to second guess our better judgment. And I think that this is where it's really good to take small steps in life and know that just because I chose something then doesn't mean that I'm going to choose the same thing now. I've got an awareness of that, and now I'm going to try something different, and what I don't know, this is huge, what I don't know, I'm willing to learn. So that is one of the biggest gifts you can ever give to yourself. And I tell you, Martine, I used to be a perfectionist before I had 4 children, and I gave up when I had 4 kids. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah. It's like, whatever.
Perfectionism can be one of the biggest, take one of the biggest holds on us and hold us back in life, because we're afraid that unless we're going to do it perfect, we're not going to do it at all. We have to get it perfect. Well, if you want to set yourself free in life, give yourself permission to make mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. And mistakes just sound bad. Mistakes are nothing more than feedback. That's just feedback telling us that wasn't the right way to do that. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to find the right way to do it. It just means that that time we didn't do it the right way. So we've always got an opportunity to learn, but we've got to give ourselves permission to acknowledge, I don't know everything. I absolutely do not know everything. I want to be a good role model to my children. I want to get everything I can right, as best I can. But we're all just doing the best job that we can in life. And we have to forgive ourselves for those mistakes that we've made and give ourselves that permission to learn what we don't know yet. And I think it just sets you free when you learn that. And going back to when you were talking about awakening, that was my awakening. My awakening was when I realized I don't have to be perfect. I can make mistakes. I can make mistakes. It's fine. It's normal. We all make mistakes. But the other thing is I can learn. What I don't know, I can learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And one other thing too, when I realized that my parents were human too, and they were going through their journeys, because, as kids or young adults, we think that our parents are supposed to be perfect and like they couldn't relate to us, or they didn't go through what we've gone through. And that's when I learned that was not the case, and I looked at my parents in a totally different light, and I understood where they were coming from. When they did certain things when I was growing up, and mistakes that they made, and as a parent now, I'm like, well, my mom or my dad, they are going through their journey as well, and they were learning too, and they weren't perfect either.
Grace is a wonderful thing which we're given, and we forget about grace a lot of the time. And we can be very hard on ourselves. But I liked what you were talking about with that perception that we have as a child of our parents, and then when we become adults and we become parents ourselves, our perception changes because we're having a lived experience of being a parent, and we have a newfound appreciation for our parents. That they're just humans too at the end of the day, and they were always just doing the best job that they could at that time with what they had. So I think that's all we can do in life, is to try and make the best use of what we know at any current time, and just use our resources as best we can. So
so many soul lessons, right? So many soul lessons. Like, we can talk about it on and on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are some of your self-care practices?
Some of my self-care practices, well, a big one, I think repetition is really important. So making it a priority, like I said. So I do a regular meditation every morning. It's a non-negotiable. I've got to do my meditation to start my day on the right foot. I think even self-care for me, and it really is for me, it's about getting into the right energy at the beginning of the day. It really makes a huge impact on your entire day. So if you wake up in the morning and you get out of bed, on the wrong foot, then that energy, if you don't shake it, that energy can stay with you all through your day. And instead of you having a glorious day, it can just, tarnish your entire day. So I really make that a priority, is that my self-care comes at the beginning of my day, and that gives me the strength that I need to handle whatever challenges are going to come up during the day. So I make sure that right when I get going, that I put myself first. So I have my shower, I do my meditation, I go for my walk. These are the sorts of three key things that I do every day to get my day started on the right foot and to get into the right energy at the beginning of the day.
Yeah,
Simple, simple.
I have a similar practice as well. I meditate, journal, and exercise in the morning.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's really important to have those morning exercises and not put it off until later in the day or
I
at
won't do it.
night.
I
Yeah,
won't do it if that's the case.
yeah,
I find it harder. Although I used to exercise at night, but I just find it so much more beneficial for me in the morning.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, each person is going to be different, but it's about finding what works for you. You know what your energy's like. For me, it just makes sense to do it in the morning so that I can start my day off and get myself into the right energy. Because to be honest, I'm not one of those morning people that just bounces out of bed and like, woo,
Yeah.
hello, day,
You gotta lead up to it. Kind of have to lead up to it.
I do. I have to do my self-care to get my energy right for the day. So I know that about myself. So I make sure that I've got my self-care practices in place every day so that, and the thing about this is it's not all about us. It never is all about us because we are all intrinsically connected to each other. So the more we work on ourselves, the more we work on our own energy, the more that the people in our life, the people who we encounter, that they will also reap the benefits of this too. Because when you start your day in the right energy and you start your day off on the right foot, then when your kids come in and they start nagging you for something,
Yes.
as kids invariably do, then your energy's okay and you
can deal with it.
You can deal with it, absolutely. So they benefit from that because you're not becoming reactive towards them because you're cruising already, you're okay.
So tell me a little bit more about Tiaras, Tears, and Triumphs, your podcast.
Yeah, so my podcast,
Love that title.
thank you. Yeah, so when COVID started, I started that podcast, and it was because I saw that the rates of domestic abuse were escalating with COVID. Because of all of the pressures that people were under, it was causing even more problems in relationships and causing these relationships to fracture, and it was making more women vulnerable. And I really thought, people are in lockdown, they need to be able to tap into support. They can't get to support so easily. They can't go and visit a friend or a relative and just have that bit of space, to help them through the challenges that they're going through. So that was my motivation to get the podcast started. So the podcast is really there for victims and survivors of abusive relationships, and I speak to people all the time, like we're having this conversation now. So there are lots of interviews on the podcast, but I also do solo episodes where I do a bit of teaching as well, and I talk about different aspects of abusive relationships to give women more information about what they are. So I talk about things like coercive control, and I talk about things like love bombing and red flags in relationships, the things to look out for so that women can listen and identify and see, is this something that's happening in my relationship? Because a lot of the time when you're in an abusive relationship, you don't necessarily identify with it as being an abusive relationship, right? Because you don't, because it's become almost normal. It's just what happens in your relationship. You don't think of it as being abusive. You know that it's not good. You know that it's ruining your life. You know that you're falling apart because of it, but you haven't identified it yet as being an abusive relationship. So when you have that understanding that it is an abusive relationship, then you can start to take control back over your choices and understand that you're in a controlling relationship and that you need support to help you to break free from that cycle of abuse. There are some really interesting statistics. It takes women on average 12 times to leave an abusive relationship.
12 times?
Yeah, and so this shows the complexity. That shows the complexity of breaking free. That shows how, you know, those things like not understanding that you are in an abusive relationship, that it takes time, that line in the sand is often blurred, and you know, you'll often pass that line in the sand and then move that line in the sand further. Something worse will happen, and then you'll move that line in the sand further and wait till the next bad thing happens, and you still haven't managed to break free from it. So there's so many different factors as to why women stay, and that's why people should just be really compassionate towards women who are, you can see, if you're somebody looking in from the outside, you look and you go, why is she staying with this guy? You know, he's obviously like abusing her, and but just be compassionate and know that that person who's in that relationship may not understand that, and fear is often something that is holding that person there in that relationship, no matter how much they want to break free. They are so scared of what the repercussions are going to be if they do that, that keeps them there, trying not to upset or antagonize or provoke the other person into doing anything that's going to hurt them more than they've already been hurt. So there's many, many understandings. So the best thing you can do is be compassionate towards that person, and let them know that you know, you're there for them. Try and support them. Ask them, what do they need? Okay. So if it's you and you are the victim of an abusive relationship, please seek out support. If you are not sure whether to go, what your rights are, you're not sure whether to go to the police as yet for assistance, you think, oh, I don't want to bother the police, you know, with this, then I recommend that you get onto Google and look for a free online counselling support service for domestic abuse. And these people are trained and specialise in this area, and you can talk to them about what's going on in your daily life, what's going on in your relationship, and they will be able to help you to guide you as to what steps are appropriate for you to take given your specific situation. So I never say to women you should or shouldn't go, but I just tell them to put their safety as the top priority, that everything else is figure outable, is what I say. You can figure the rest of it out, but your safety, if you're not safe, then that you can't figure out. You need to get yourself safe. So that's the top priority. And if you're feeling unsafe in your relationship, that is an indication that you need support. And more than likely, you will need more support than what you might be able to tap into through family or friends. Family and friends often will throw you in the too hard basket, or you've been estranged from them, isolated from them in the relationship. That often happens in abusive relationships where the women become very isolated. They're not allowed to have contact with their friends. They're not allowed to have contact with their family. And all of this is because their partner is disempowering them. The partner wants to keep them under their control. So that is why you'll find yourself isolated and like, oh, you know, I've got no friends all of a sudden. I've got, you know, like I can't see my family. And it's all because this is part of that power and control game that gets played in abusive relationships. So please, please, please if you identify with being a victim of an abusive relationship, please seek support. And I help women through a program on the other side. I help them to go away from victimhood and learn how to become empowered again in their life. So I've got lots of different services, but that transformation that women are seeking when they want to get their life back, and not only do they want to get their life back, but they actually want a rich and rewarding life, then that's what I help them to do. So yeah, I love it.
That's a perfect closing message. Thank you, Sandy, so much. This was
You're very
really
welcome.
great conversation. And if anyone wanted to reach you, where could they? I will have all of Sandy's information in the description box, but go ahead. For the listeners, if anybody wanted to reach out to you on social media, where can they find you?
So come to my website. It's www.sandyj.com.au, and on my website I've got links to my podcast. I've got a free Facebook community, Rise Up with Tiaras, Tears and Triumphs, and that is for women, and that is to be a safe space to support you through any challenges that you face. All my services are available on my website. If you want to be a friend on Facebook, just look up Sandy Johnston and you'll find me. I will share a link to my link tree, which has links to everything to Martine, and that can go into the episode notes.
Thank you so much, Sandy, for being with us. And for everyone else listening and or watching, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And I'll be back with another episode of Martine's Musings. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Martine.
Bye-bye.